We're standing in the control plot, which is what this whole entire 5-acre field was. This is pasture that has been pasture for about 60 years and hasn't had much done to it for the last 15 years. No fertilizer, just basically grazing and haying once in a while. So for the last 3 years, we grazed it and then we mowed it and left it on the surface in preparation for what was to come, which was hopefully working towards an organic, minimum till and no-till vegetable production system. So here's where we started, and we'll move to where we are now. This is now a 30-foot by 600-foot plot where we did nothing, so that we can always come back and use this as our control or our test plot to see where we started. So we're doing soil tests here. We've been doing them for about 2 years, and we compare them to what we're doing now. So what we have in this pasture, what was the foundation for the vegetable fields that we'll see, is mainly smooth brome. We had a few legumes or nitrogen fixers. We have alfalfa that was in this field, and we have red clover. And because this pasture hasn't been fertilized and we hadn't done much with it, we also have a lot of weeds. We have oxeye daisy, we have some goldenrod, we have several annual weeds, but mostly we have the things that are moving in that, that don't need as much nitrogen as the grasses, because as we have not taken care of this pasture in the traditional sense, not fertilizing it, the balance in soil nutrition has moved to less and less nitrogen. So we're starting to see weeds moving into this field, which will allow us to see what would have happened if we hadn't tilled and put in the cover crops and the crops that we originally did. As the first part of our project, we wanted to go from that pasture that we just looked at to something that would slow up the grass growth and move us more towards the annual production of vegetables. So our interim step was to put down a green manure or a cover crop. The first thing we did was to graze the pasture down with a large amount of sheep. We had 600 sheep in the pasture, this 5 acres, for about 2 months. And they grazed it down to just about nothing, and we called it our sheep tillage. And they did that in October 2005. Then in the spring of 2006, we came in and the ground was still obviously quite bare, where the sheep had grazed it down so short. And we came in with a plow and we just turned over all of the sod. And remember, we're talking about 60 years of roots. So there was quite a bit, and we were lucky in that April 2005 was very, very dry. So we came through, turned it over, and it was able to dry over. We went down about 6 to 8 inches and just turned it over. It was basically less of a plow and more of an undercut of the sod, because we only went one pass through with the plow. We let it dry for about 2 weeks. It was very dry. We came through and we disked it 3 times altogether. And then in May, we seeded our green manure or our living mulch, our cover crop. We seeded high rates of red clover and a grain or a grass, triticale. And we mixed them together at about a 1-to-1 ratio, and we seeded in a specific pattern. So we took the seeder up and down the field, then we went across the field, and then we went on a diagonal. So all together, we took the seed and split it into thirds and put it out up and down, back and forth, and on a diagonal. And the reason we did that is we wanted to have as thick a cover as we could, because going from that pasture where we were already getting weeds, we wanted to make sure there was no room anywhere for weed seeds to germinate and grow. And as you can see with this clover, we succeeded pretty well. We were lucky again in that May was a very wet month in 2005, and we irrigated so that we did get a very strong stand of clover. In the first 6 weeks, we saw quite a bit of the triticale germinate, but by midsummer 2005, the red clover had almost entirely dominated, mainly because we were adding quite a bit of water and because the nitrogen levels are quite low in this field. As you can see, our green manure crop is very water dependent. On the left, we have the second year of our green manure crop. This is 2006 in August. This has been irrigated. What I'm standing on that looks quite brown, you can see the cover crop, the red clover, has pretty much died above ground and has gone to seed. This is as far as the sprinklers will reach, and so this has had only natural water through all of 2006. It was irrigated well in 2005 to get it established, but in 2006 it's had no irrigation whatsoever. Fortunately, again, we had a wet spring in 2006, and so it was able to get up to about 1.5 feet, 2 feet before we went through one of our driest Julys on record, and you can see what happened with no water. So in our western region, which is very different, much drier from other parts of the country, some of these legumes that have been used with great success are going to have to be used a little differently unless we add water. So here's what it looks like without water in a typical Montana summer.
If you like this sort of thing, come on out to the forums at permies.com, where we talk about living mulches, homesteading, and permaculture all the time.